He won a ticket to another world along with a skill that multiplied his abilities by 777. Now overwhelmingly powerful, he begins an adventure in a new reality filled with monsters, merchants, and kings. A day ago, a lottery bell rang out on a busy street. Someone in the crowd had just won the grand prize. The crowd was electric, but for the man next in line, it was a letdown. The grand prize was gone. Still, he noticed a new smartphone was still up for grabs. With a shrug, he stepped up to take his turn anyway. His lottery prize wasn't money, but a sparkling orb reflecting his own shocked face. To his complete surprise, he was announced on stage as the winner of a secret jackpot he didn't even know was possible. Realizing his secret prize must be better than first place, he confidently followed an announcer behind a curtain to claim his reward. He stepped through the curtain into a surreal checkerboard room. His prize a completely new reality. Trapped in a doorless checkerboard room, he watched in shock as the first-place winner happily received his prize, a skill to use tentacles. The protagonist overheard the first-place winner calmly agree to be transferred, realizing with a shock that the prize was a one-way trip. In a flash of light from a magic circle, the man vanished, leaving the protagonist staring in disbelief. The woman confirmed she sent the other man to another world and then turned to the protagonist, congratulating him on winning this secret grand prize. Staring him down, the woman confirmed his worst fears with unnerving calm. "I transferred him," she stated, pausing for effect before delivering the final, world-shattering words, "to another world." He repeated her words in disbelief. "Transferred to another world?" The woman explained his prize. Like the first-place winner, he will be transferred to another world, but he also gets to draw a special skill from a lottery. He realized the lottery was how the other winner got his tentacle skill, but the woman revealed his own prize was far better. He could spin it as many times as he wanted. The woman clarified the catch. He could spin the lottery as many times as he wanted, but he could only choose one final skill to take to the other world. Understanding the rule, he decided to try it. Deciding to start, he cranked the lottery machine and got his first skill, which appeared to be related to fire. The woman named his skill Fire Breathing Man, and explaining he could test it in that room, encouraged him to try. Skeptical, he took a deep breath. When he tested the skill, instead of fire, he just coughed up a massive, swirling cloud of black smoke. The skill backfired, setting his hair on fire. After he panicked, the woman asked if he was satisfied, and he confirmed he wanted to use his unlimited retries. He re-rolled twice. First, he got a 10x abilities skill, but rejected it for being too plain. Next, he drew a Wiseman skill for all knowledge, but rejected that too, finding it too scary. He continued to re-roll, first rejecting a Berserker skill just by its name, then discarding a 2x abilities skill for being weaker than a previous one. As a flood of skills came from the machine, he rejected them all, including Master Swordsmanship, Flight, Body Strengthening, Thunder Magic, and the ability to talk to animals. Exhausted from countless re-rolls, both he and the woman were tired. He began to regret rejecting an earlier 10x abilities skill, but despite his fatigue, he prepared to spin again. As he spun the crank one last time, a blinding flash of light erupted from the machine, shocking him completely. The final spin produced a rainbow-colored prize, a result so rare even the woman had never seen it. The skill multiplied all of his abilities by 777, and he ecstatically decided to keep it. As he confirmed he was ready for the transfer, the woman gave a final warning. He could return to his old world whenever he wished, but if he did, he could never go back to the new one. With a confident smile, he was enveloped in a brilliant light as the transfer to the other world finally began. He arrived in a vast, open landscape, and before he could process his new surroundings, was stunned to see a dragon fly past him. The majestic dragon soared freely over the vast, mountainous landscape of a new world, a world dotted with floating crystals. His shock turned to excitement as he realized he was truly in another world, imagining all the fantasy elements he might find, from mages and knights to new creatures and foods. His wish to see new creatures was granted immediately as he came face to face with a giant, menacing bull in the forest, his first monster. His reaction to being in another world wasn't shock, but a wide, manic grin, revealing a frightening level of excitement for his new situation. After a moment's pause, the monster let out a roar and launched a ferocious charge, forcing the protagonist to realize the immediate danger he was in. His initial alarm at the monster's charge quickly faded, replaced by a confident grin as he decided this was the perfect opportunity to test the powerful cheat skill he had just gained. As the monster charged, he felt his own power overflowing. He calmly clenched his fists and stood his ground, ready to face the attack head-on. Instead of dodging the charge, he met it head-on, stopping the monster's massive horn with a single, powerful punch. As his fist connected with the monster, he let out a powerful scream, channeling all of his overflowing power into the single blow. His single punch was so overwhelmingly powerful that it sent the massive monster flying backward through the air. Seeing the result of his punch, he clenched his fist with a wild, triumphant grin, exhilarated by the overwhelming power he had just unleashed. After being launched high into the sky, the massive monster came crashing back down to Earth with a thunderous impact. As he marveled at the amazing power of his new skill, his celebration was cut short by the sound of a scream coming from the nearby forest. The source of the scream was a group of soldiers in a tense standoff, defending their carriage from a herd of the same bull-like monsters. The standoff had become a deadly fight. The injured soldiers fought desperately, but one of their own already lay on the ground as the monsters prepared to charge again. Jumping into the fray to help the soldiers, he intercepted one of the charging monsters with a single, powerful kick. The force of his kick sent the massive monster skidding and tumbling violently across the ground, instantly neutralizing the threat. As the shocked soldier asked who he was, the protagonist introduced himself as Kakeru. His attempt to explain his name using the word kanji only confused the soldier as another monster prepared to attack. As the next monster charged, he didn't just stop it. He grabbed it by the horns and effortlessly lifted the massive beast into the air, leaving the soldiers speechless with shock. After lifting the beast, he slammed it back into the ground with incredible force, triumphantly thinking to himself, 2 down. Without pausing, he dashed to the next monster and took it down with a single, powerful punch, mentally counting 3 down. To engage the final monster, he launched himself high into the air, preparing to strike it from above. He came down from the air with a devastating blow, completely obliterating the final monster in a massive explosion of earth and rock as the soldiers watched in utter disbelief. After defeating the entire herd, he let out a triumphant shout, exhilarated by his overwhelming victory. The soldiers stared at the defeated monsters, completely awestruck by the overwhelming power of the man who had just defeated the entire herd in an instant. The lead soldier gratefully thanked Kakeru for saving them, then formally introduced himself as Fortius, a knight of the Mercury Kingdom. A woman emerged from the carriage to thank him, but the knight Fortius interjected, revealing to a surprised Kakeru that she was a princess and he had just saved her life. The beautiful, blushing elf princess was revealed. She then stepped forward and gently took the surprised protagonist's hand. With a bright, tearful smile, the princess thanked him with the utmost respect, telling him that he seemed to be very strong. The princess, trying to understand his power, asked if he was a well-known adventurer. He humbly downplayed his actions, but she simply giggled and insisted that he was truly an amazing person. As the knight informed Princess Aline that their preparations were ready, Kakeru was completely captivated, thinking to himself that she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. As a defeated opponent was sent flying, a narrator reflected that while preventing an enemy from using their full strength is a valid strategy, the power displayed here was on another level entirely. The princess explained that since she was on official business, she couldn't properly thank him now. Instead, she gave him her fan as a token of gratitude and as a royal pass to be shown at the castle later. As they prepared to part ways, the princess looked at him and sincerely said that she hoped to meet him again. With a final, polite nod, the princess and her knights prepared to continue on their journey. He watched the princess's carriage depart, hoping they would meet again. Left alone on the battlefield, he then turned to the defeated monsters, wondering what he should do with them. Just as he was wondering what to do, a merchant and his group arrived, shocked and amazed to find a large number of defeated mountain bulls. The merchant introduced himself as Salamas, explaining his own party was there to hunt the bulls. He was stunned when Kakeru casually confirmed he'd defeated the entire herd by himself, a feat said to require 10 adventurers for a single bull. Naive to their true power, the protagonist asked if the bulls were really that strong. The merchant then posed a practical question. How did he plan to carry the massive bulls to town? A problem the protagonist admitted he hadn't considered. Seeing an opportunity, the merchant offered a solution. His company would buy the bulls and transport them for a discounted fee of 1 silver coin per bull. In response to the offer to transport the bulls he supposedly couldn't carry, the protagonist effortlessly lifted one of the massive creatures onto his shoulders, leaving the merchant speechless. The scene shifted, showing their arrival at a large, impressive building in a nearby town. After selling the monster carcasses to the merchant, he was left stunned and overwhelmed when presented with his payment. Countless towering stacks of sparkling coins. The merchant explained the high value of the monster parts. Meanwhile, the protagonist, ignorant of the new world's economy, wondered about the coin's worth and mistook a banknote for a paper scrap. When the protagonist asked about the banknote, the merchant was confused, revealing he couldn't see anything at all. This led the protagonist to wonder if the paper money was somehow magical. Realizing only he could see the banknote, he quickly played it off as a joke. He then privately concluded that this strange effect was likely related to the same lottery that brought him there. As the protagonist decided to investigate his magical money theory later, their conversation was interrupted by a knock, and a woman entered the office. The person who entered was a fox girl with a large, fluffy tail, dressed in a maid's uniform and carrying a tea service. A close-up view highlighted the new fox girl's large, expressive eyes and cute, blushing face. He noticed the maid's animal ears and tail, quickly accepting that such human beasts would be normal in another world. He was then immediately captivated by her cuteness, thinking she was even cuter than an idol. His admiration continued as he fixated on how cute her ears and tail were, thinking she looked so soft and fluffy that he had a strong desire to pet her. He was completely lost in a blissful daze, fanning himself while thinking only of how much he wanted to pet the fox girl, completely oblivious to someone calling his name. Noticing the ornate fan the protagonist was holding, the merchant recognized its importance and urgently asked if he could take a closer look. Upon inspecting the fan more closely, the merchant's eyes went wide with shock as he began to realize its incredible significance. As the merchant held the fan, a giant, glowing projection of the royal crest magically appeared in the room, stunning the protagonist. The merchant Salamas explained that the magical crest belonged to the royal family of Mercury, confirming the fan was a gift from Her Highness. He then recalled that, according to rumors, only distinguished knights who fought for the royal family ever receive such an honor. Salamas excitedly concluded that the protagonist must therefore be an incredibly strong person who has earned the princess's personal trust. Completely overwhelmed, the merchant then prostrated himself on the floor, begging for the honor of having his company serve such an important figure. Accepting the merchant's pledge of service, the protagonist immediately decided he wanted to make a purchase. With his newfound wealth, the protagonist excitedly declared that his first goal was to get a house, followed by something else. He was soon shown standing before a large and impressive mansion, which he had successfully acquired. He couldn't help but feel that obtaining such a grand mansion so easily was rather suspicious. Next, he sought out the fox girl, insisting he wanted her specifically. She revealed she was a slave, but he dismissed her concerns and introduced himself. In response, the blushing fox girl shyly introduced herself, stating that her name was Myomi Mew. As they entered their new mansion, he instructed her to call him Master, and she shyly agreed. He then took a moment to reflect on his new life, laughing with excitement at the limitless possibilities his new power offered. When Mio asked for her first task as his maid, he enthusiastically declared that, for starters, he would pet her, thinking that this new world was the best. He gently began to pat her on the head, causing the shy maid to quietly say his name. Completely content, he found himself blissfully petting both her head and her fluffy tail, wondering how long he would stay that way with his cute new maid. The fox girl, Mio, formally introduced herself again as a human beast and slave, thanking her new master for the purchase, who in turn asked her to spin around for him. As she shyly spun for him, he became giddy with excitement, realizing he now had a maid with adorable animal features, something he never could have experienced in his old world. His mind reeled as he admired all of her best features: her cute animal ears, her wagging tail, and her overall beauty. When she seemed to overhear him mutter the word beauty, he got flustered and quickly changed the subject by demanding another petting session. During the petting session, he teased her about not stopping until he was satisfied and reminded her to call him master, which she did, flustered but secretly enjoying the attention. Exploring their new mansion together, Mio was amazed by its size. When she questioned his eagerness to pet her, he simply explained that he had wanted to ever since they first met. He later presented Mio with her own soft bed, where she lay down with a cute, blushing expression. That evening, as he sat in his new room, he reflected on the unbelievable day he'd had since arriving in this new world and all the wonderful things he had bought. His narration specified the two greatest purchases: the massive, fully furnished mansion and the peacefully sleeping human beast maid, Mio. The next morning began with Mio letting out a sleepy sigh as she started to wake up, ready for her new life to begin. The new day began with the protagonist and his maid, Mio, standing on the balcony of their grand mansion, admiring the beautiful garden below. Mio was in awe of the beautiful sight, and the protagonist seemed pleased by her happy and impressed reaction. He then surprised her by officially entrusting her with the management of the entire mansion and giving her money to handle the shopping. Mio was hesitant to accept, questioning if it was truly all right for a slave like herself to be given such an enormous responsibility. After he reassured her that it was fine, she shyly accepted the important role he had given her. Overcome with gratitude for the trust he placed in her, Mio tearfully promised to do everything with her utmost effort. With the day's business settled, the protagonist happily announced that he was going to take a bath to relax. Soaking in the warm water, he reflected on the tiring day he'd had since arriving in the new world and was grateful for the simple comfort of a normal bath. While marveling at his amazing power, he casually offered to wash the back of the person who had just entered the bathroom. This devolved into chaos when it was revealed Mio had come to help, but his power had created clones, leading to his own shock and manic excitement at the unfolding scene. After some convincing, the flustered maid Mio changed out of her uniform and into a simple bath towel, which her new master found much more suitable. As she prepared to help, he had a mischievous internal monologue, reminding himself that as her master, he could do anything he wanted to her. His thoughts continued as he admired her figure, smugly concluding that her combination of animal ears, a tail, and a large chest made her his ideal type. Mio then began to wash his back, and he relaxed completely, thinking to himself how wonderful it felt. He revealed his true desire was simply to pet her ears and tail, but as he did so, his peaceful moment was interrupted when he noticed something amiss. Their peaceful bath was suddenly interrupted when the hot water inexplicably turned to ice, shocking them both with the intense cold. A moment later, a sinister laugh echoed throughout the bathroom, filling them both with a sense of pure dread. The terrifying event caused a frightened Mio to begin recalling a warning that the merchant, Salamas, had told them earlier. This jogged the protagonist's memory as well, and he suddenly remembered the crucial, terrifying detail about their new home. It was haunted. A flashback revealed the shady deal. The merchant had sold them the mansion for a suspiciously low price precisely because it had an annoying problem. The protagonist recalled his conversation with the merchant, who had cheerfully admitted the mansion might have a ghost, but figured someone as powerful as him wouldn't have a problem with it. Instead of being scared, he was filled with manic excitement, grabbing the terrified Mio and declaring that they were going to go exterminate some ghosts. Seeing how genuinely frightened she was, he softened his approach, gently reassuring her that everything was fine and promising to protect her no matter what. Trusting in his promise, Mio agreed to help, and they decided their first logical step was to leave the dark bathroom and find a light source. However, upon entering the main hall, they were immediately confronted by a massive, menacing supernatural presence covering the ceiling. The battle against the ghost began with a violent explosion that sent both the protagonist and a terrified Mio flying across the hall. He quickly realized that the ghost could attack physically but remained invisible, meaning he would have to find its true form to defeat it. Preparing for a high-speed fight, he scooped Mio up into his arms and told her to brace herself for some rough movement. As the ghost launched a barrage of sharp projectiles, he dashed through the danger to protect her, praising her for being a good girl. He soon deduced the ghost strategy. Its ice attacks weren't random, but were specifically trying to prevent him from reaching a door at the end of the hall. Upon entering the forbidden room, they were immediately confronted by the true, monstrous forms of the mansion's ghosts. The ghosts launched a powerful attack, forcing the protagonist to dodge a blow that shattered the wall beside him. As the assault continued, he rushed to shield a terrified Mio with his own body from the destructive attacks. After one particularly devastating blow, Mio screamed in terror, believing her master had been defeated as he lay motionless on the ground. But his defeat was just an act. He looked up with a wild grin, the number 777 blazing on his forehead as he revealed he was just kidding. With his power fully awakened, he easily dodged the ghost attacks, realizing he didn't even need to move as a tearful Mio watched on. He then unleashed a furious, non-stop barrage of punches, completely overwhelming the monstrous ghost with his incredible speed and power. The ghost shrieked in agony under the relentless assault as the protagonist let out his own powerful battle cry. Channeling the full might of his 777X ability, he delivered a final, devastating punch that sent the ghost spinning into oblivion. In the battle's aftermath, the area became peaceful and filled with snow, and the defeated ghost left behind a single, mysterious card before disappearing. After the ghost vanished, Mio rushed to her master's side, finding him in a daze as he stared at the mysterious card left behind. A moment later, filled with adoration, she looked up at him and said she wasn't scared anymore because she knew he was truly amazing. Moved by her trust and wanting to comfort her after the terrifying fight, he pulled her into a warm and reassuring hug. He continued to soothe her with gentle affection, kissing her forehead and giving a light peck to her cute, twitching fox ear. Later that night, feeling completely safe and cared for after the day's ordeal, Mio slept soundly and peacefully in her new bed. Holding the card the ghost left behind, he realized it must be a lottery ticket and remembered the woman's words that he could return simply by praying. Closing his eyes, he concentrated with all his might, focusing his will on the desire to return to that mysterious room. To his shock, the prayer worked instantly, and he found himself standing once again inside the surreal, checkerboard lottery room. The mysterious woman welcomed him back, confirming he had used a lottery ticket and explaining that this time the prizes would be tools, not skills. She then revealed the new list of prizes, which included items like a teleporting feather and a dimensional warehouse, with the grand prize remaining a tantalizing mystery. The mysterious woman began to explain the new set of prizes, starting with magic stones, black for offense and white for recovery. She continued by detailing the other amazing items, including a teleporting warp feather, a dimensional storage warehouse, and an infinite 50% off shopping cart. As an added incentive, she revealed a special bargain. If he collects 10 lottery tickets, he gets a bonus 11th draw for free. As he left the lottery room, he reflected that with such useful items, his new life would be easy, and he promised to return once he had gathered more tickets. Back in his mansion and armed with this new knowledge, he enthusiastically set his new primary objective, to collect as many lottery tickets as he could. Following their adventure, The protagonist and Mio arrived at the town of Roizen, where they found a local diner to get a meal. He was delighted to find that the mountain cattle he had defeated earlier made for an incredibly delicious meal. While savoring the juicy meat, he reminded himself that he couldn't get complacent, as he still had goals to accomplish. His main goal was to figure out how to acquire more lottery tickets, but his thoughts were interrupted when he noticed Mio had begun to cry. She explained her tears were of gratitude, as she never expected to be treated so kindly. He simply smiled and promised her that this was just the beginning. At the diner, the waitress mentioned that the delicious meat had recently been supplied by a strong adventurer, causing Mio to realize with pride that she was talking about her master. When the time came to pay for their meal, the protagonist offered a single, sparkling silver coin. The waitress explained that this was a problem. Due to a recent and mysterious shortage of copper coins in town, they were struggling to make change. Hearing about the shortage, the protagonist had a sudden realization, seeing a risky but potentially rewarding opportunity related to his need to collect things. Overwhelmed by his kindness throughout the day, Mio later gave her master a bright, heartfelt thank you. While in the diner, the protagonist heard a mysterious voice no one else could, leading him to realize his 777X ability had also greatly enhanced his sense of hearing. His super hearing allowed him to eavesdrop on a nearby conversation about the town's copper coin shortage, and he immediately decided to investigate the culprits. Following the voices, he learned of their criminal plot. They were melting down copper coins to resell the raw material for double the price. The trail led him to a large, gated building, and he knew that the people responsible for the town's economic troubles were inside. Peering inside from a rooftop, his suspicions were confirmed as he watched the men handling bags of coins, and he prepared to take his newfound easy money. Realizing the coin smugglers were part of a large organization, the protagonist debated the best course of action, wondering what he should do. He decided to seek help, asking Mio if there were any local authorities like police who could handle the criminals. He then took direct action, getting the attention of a newly arrived government official, Kefka Almaso, by loudly accusing the building's occupants of smuggling. The official vowed to handle the crime, but his attention was immediately drawn to the ornate fan the protagonist was carrying. Instantly recognizing the royal fan, the official assumed the protagonist was a secret agent for the princess, a convenient misunderstanding the protagonist did not correct. In a shocking betrayal, the government official didn't arrest the criminals, but instead ordered his guards to arrest the protagonist. The official, Kefka, then revealed his corruption, smugly telling the protagonist that it was his own fault for interfering with business that was happening right in front of his office. Following their orders, the guards violently restrained both the protagonist and a terrified Mio, who cried out for her master. The corrupt official gloated over his captives, openly admitting to working with criminals and threatening to kill them both to cover his tracks. Held captive, the protagonist came to a grim realization. No matter what world you go to, corrupt bastards will always exist. Seeing that they were outmatched, the corrupt guards resorted to a cowardly tactic, taking a terrified Mio hostage. Seeing Mio in danger, the protagonist flew into a rage, grabbing one of the guards and furiously demanding what he was doing to her. His anger caused him to completely snap, unleashing the full, blazing power of his 777X ability. With his power fully released, he instantly and violently dispatched the guards, throwing them around the room like rag dolls. Holding the rescued Mio protectively in his arms, he decided that arresting the corrupt official and his men himself would be the best and easiest course of action. Terrified by the protagonist's true power, the corrupt official panicked and changed his order from arrest to kill him. The guards immediately charged forward as a group, causing a frightened Mio to shout a warning to her master. Completely unfazed by the attack, the protagonist effortlessly stopped a guard's spear thrust with his bare hands. He then took a moment to gently pat a worried Mio on the head, telling her to stay put and be a good girl. Before turning back to face the guards, he gave her one last gentle reassurance to calm her fears. Unfazed by their numbers, The protagonist fearlessly charged directly into the line of armored guards, sending them scattering with his sheer speed. He moved so fast that the guards' attacks hit nothing but empty air, leaving them stunned as he seemingly vanished before their eyes. Reappearing in the center of their formation, he unleashed a chaotic flurry of blows, effortlessly dominating the entire squad of soldiers. A single one of his punches was so powerful it created a shockwave that blasted through their ranks, knocking down multiple guards at once. He demonstrated his brutal strength by grabbing one of the last guards and violently slamming him into the stone floor, shattering it on impact. The protagonist's power was so overwhelming that the terrified guards could only scream that he was a monster as he finished them off. Seeing his forces utterly defeated, the corrupt official panicked and desperately tried to rally his men to continue the futile fight. After easily dispatching the last of the guards, the protagonist turned his cold, menacing gaze to the final opponent, the official himself. In a final, desperate act, the official launched an attack, but it was effortlessly deflected and overpowered by the protagonist's own power. The protagonist's counterattack culminated in a massive explosion of light, completely obliterating the corrupt official and ending his reign. A new villain appeared and attacked the protagonist with a powerful fire spell, laughing maniacally as he declared it was punishment for opposing him. To the villain's shock, the protagonist emerged from the fiery blast completely unharmed. He smugly explained that, thanks to his cheat skill, his magic resistance was also multiplied by 777, making him immune to the spell. As the terrified villain desperately threw more magic, the protagonist realized he could now wield the power he had absorbed from the mansion's ghost. However, he didn't even need the new magic, ending the fight instantly with another overwhelmingly powerful punch. Deciding to test his new powers, the protagonist declared that his opponent would be the first guinea pig for his recently acquired ice magic. He then unleashed the spell, sending a massive wave of ice and snow surging forward. His 777X ability amplified the magic to an incredible degree, forming colossal, razor-sharp ice crystals. The attack became an unstoppable avalanche of ice that blasted down the city street toward his enemy. Seeing the overwhelming power bearing down on him, the terrified villain could only scream and beg for forgiveness. In the quiet aftermath of the battle, the protagonist took a moment to examine the mysterious, sparkling card that the defeated ghost had left behind. He quickly understood its function, a wide grin spreading across his face as he realized that by killing enemies, he could earn more lottery tickets. The protagonist was thrilled by this simple rule, seeing his new life as an exciting plot where defeating bad guys would lead to incredible rewards. Looking back at the corrupt official and his base, now completely frozen in a monument of ice, he couldn't help but think that perhaps he had overdone it. Holding Mio close, he had a final, grim thought, concluding that no matter the world, there would always be senseless criminals that he would have to face. Several days passed after the protagonist dealt with the corrupt official and his men. During that time, news of his overwhelming accomplishments spread throughout the kingdom, and his fated reunion with the princess drew ever closer. The town was in an uproar after his battle, leading to him being summoned to the public office to explain the incident. By a stroke of fate, Princess Helene herself arrived in town at that very moment, explaining that she was there to visit her little sister. The protagonist and the princess then shared their happy reunion, with her blushing as she greeted him once again. Following the commotion in town, the protagonist was brought before Princess Helene and her sister for a formal meeting. There, he was introduced to a young woman in armor, and he was immediately struck by her strong resemblance to Princess Helene. Princess Helene formally confirmed their relationship, introducing the armored woman as her beloved little sister, Iris. Iris then took charge, introducing herself as Iris Teresia Mercury, the authority in charge of the state's disputes, and requested a full report from the protagonist. After hearing his testimony, they were able to confirm the corrupt official was part of a larger criminal syndicate, and the protagonist was praised for his decisive actions. During his meeting with the princesses, he learned that the coin smuggling incident was not an isolated event, but a systemic crime that had happened many times before. He realized that simply arresting the current criminals was not a real solution, as a new organization would inevitably take their place, so a more fundamental plan was needed. Suddenly, he was struck with an idea from his old world, confidently announcing to the skeptical princess that he may have found a solution. He then presented a piece of paper marked with a value and asked if they could magically apply the royal crest to it. With a sly grin, he revealed his revolutionary plan. The royal family would solve the coin crisis by issuing this paper as the kingdom's official new currency. The protagonist explained that since only the royal family could apply the magical crest, the new paper money would be impossible to forge. Princess Iris was overjoyed, realizing his plan would stabilize the kingdom's economy and simplify all transactions for the nation. Overcome with gratitude, Iris thanked him for his wonderful idea and personally promised to repay him for his service to the kingdom in the future. Princess Helene also thanked him for saving them yet again and, impressed by his wisdom, asked if he would be willing to do them one more favor. The favor required a journey to the fortified city of Uboy on the kingdom's front lines, where there were reports of strange enemy activity. Upon arriving at the frontline city of Uboy, a knight began to brief the protagonist on the strange situation regarding the local barbarian tribes. The situation was clarified by a soldier's report. Enemy barbarians were being found collapsed with mysterious, grievous wounds, and more were being rescued every day. Princess Iris explained that it was because of this strange and increasingly dangerous situation that she had specifically requested him to act as her sister's guard. With a confident grin, the protagonist simply suggested that the whole problem could be solved if he went to investigate the source himself, shocking the princess with his casual boldness. He ignored their protests about the danger, borrowing a sword and cheerfully declaring that he would go and annihilate the mysterious enemy. As they prepared to face the approaching enemy, a knight noticed the protagonist's lack of protection and questioned him about his armor. With a confident grin, the protagonist simply held up his sword and declared that for someone with his power, armor was not necessary. A moment later, they were confronted by the sight of a massive army of fierce barbarian warriors charging in their direction. But then a different group of soldiers appeared, surrendering and begging for protection, revealing that the barbarian army was not attacking, but fleeing from an even greater threat that was coming. Realizing the true situation, the protagonist stood his ground and challenged this new, unseen enemy, ready to protect everyone from the terror that had sent an entire army running. A terrifying new enemy suddenly emerged from a nearby tomb, and the protagonist was shocked to learn he was the legendary king of barbarians. The king was revealed to be a massive, undead warrior clad in dark, imposing armor and radiating an aura of overwhelming power. His own men were terrified of him, as he turned his blade on his own kind without a moment's hesitation. He brutally demonstrated his immense strength and cruelty by effortlessly slashing through his own soldiers. The protagonist and the princesses could only look on in horror, completely stunned by the sheer power and brutality of this new threat. Watching the barbarian king attack his own allies, the protagonist was shocked, but the princess next to him speculated that his strange sword might be the cause of his madness. Her suspicion was confirmed. The weapon was the legendary cursed demon sword Eleanor, a fact that made the protagonist grin as he understood the truth of the situation. Now seemingly controlled by the cursed sword's power, the barbarian king turned his attention to the royal party and leaped forward to attack the princess. The royal guards reacted instantly, bravely forming a shield wall to intercept their former king's deadly assault. Moving with incredible speed, the protagonist snatched the princess out of harm's way just as the barbarian king's attack shattered the guards' defenses. Watching the barbarian king attack his own allies, the protagonist was shocked, but the princess next to him speculated that his strange sword might be the cause of his madness. Her suspicion was confirmed. The weapon was the legendary cursed demon sword Eleanor, a fact that made the protagonist grin as he understood the truth of the situation. Now seemingly controlled by the cursed sword's power, the barbarian king turned his attention to the royal party and leaped forward to attack the princess. The royal guards reacted instantly, bravely forming a shield wall to intercept their former king's deadly assault. Moving with incredible speed, the protagonist snatched the princess out of harm's way just as the barbarian king's attack shattered the guard's defenses. With a confident grin, the protagonist told everyone to stay back, preparing to face the fearsome barbarian king all by himself. The barbarian king let out a mighty roar and initiated his attack, swinging his massive sword with incredible force. The protagonist's borrowed sword was no match for the king's power, shattering to pieces the moment he tried to block the attack. Unfazed, he then resorted to using his own body, effortlessly blocking the king's powerful sword strikes with his bare hands. Deciding it was all about strength anyway, he then summoned a new, spinning weapon and launched it at the surprised barbarian king. As he continued his duel with the barbarian king, the protagonist casually taunted his legendary opponent, telling him he was simply too slow. He immediately proved his words, using his overwhelming speed to effortlessly parry and deflect the king's powerful strikes. Pushed to his limit, the barbarian king revealed his true power, transforming into a giant, monstrous golem that towered over the battlefield. The massive golem then unleashed a devastating attack, slamming its colossal sword into the ground with incredible, earth-shattering force. Yet even this incredible power was not enough, and after the protagonist defeated the monster, the onlooking soldiers could only stare in disbelief. After defeating the barbarian king, the protagonist casually tossed the legendary demon sword aside, unimpressed and calling it no big deal. In a horrifying twist, the cursed sword's influence spread to Princess Helene, who picked up the blade and was immediately possessed by its dark power. Surrounded by a malevolent aura, the possessed princess could only cry out as the sword's evil power began to overwhelm her. She then involuntarily unleashed the sword's magic, causing gruesome skeletal hands to erupt from the ground around the horrified onlookers. The sword's true, terrifying power was then revealed as it summoned an entire army of the undead, a legendary force that had once destroyed nations. The summoned army of the undead quickly overwhelmed the royal knights, who were no match for the legendary force's numbers and strength. In stark contrast, the protagonist cut through the undead mobs with ease, annoyed that such weak enemies were wasting his time. He then came face to face with the possessed Princess Helene, who unleashed a devastating attack with the full power of the demon sword. To counter her, he used his incredible speed to create multiple afterimages, surrounding her in an attempt to disarm her of the cursed blade. Finally breaking through her guard, he placed his hand upon her, unleashing a wave of power to separate her from the sword's evil influence. While fighting the undead, the protagonist realized his only path to victory was to knock the cursed sword from the princess's hand, a task proving much harder than he'd thought. The possessed princess made his job even more difficult by attacking him with shadowy tendrils, forcing him to stay on the defensive. He had to rely on his incredible speed, creating multiple afterimages of himself just to keep up with the relentless barrage of dark energy. As he fought, Princess Iris bravely joined the battle, striking down the undead soldiers with a fierce battle cry. Iris then took command of the remaining knights, ordering them to form a defensive line to protect the injured and hold back the undead horde. Completely consumed by the cursed sword's power, Princess Helene was transformed into a terrifying new enemy, radiating dark energy. She immediately demonstrated her newfound power by effortlessly blasting away the royal guards who stood in her path. The lead knight bravely moved to protect Princess Iris, determined to face his possessed princess by himself. But the possessed Helene was too powerful, quickly ensnaring her own sister in choking tendrils of dark magic. Breaking free, a determined Iris then created a magical barrier, preparing herself to fight her powerful, possessed sister. Seeing the princess in danger, the protagonist ignored all risks and rushed forward to confront her possessed form and save her. Meanwhile, the princess was in agony, physically restrained by the sword's dark power as she fought a losing battle for control of her own body. With the last of her strength, she momentarily resisted the possession to gasp a desperate warning for her sister, Iris, to run to safety. When the protagonist finally reached her, the weakened princess, believing she was beyond saving, tearfully begged him to kill her. He refused her plea, instead praising her for being a good girl for fighting so hard, ready to save her without sacrificing her. The protagonist engaged the possessed princess in a fierce sword duel, matching his strength against the legendary power of the demon sword. After being pushed back by a blast of dark energy, he calmly told the rampaging princess to just wait, signaling his imminent counterattack. With a powerful roar, he charged forward through a blinding flash of light, preparing to unleash his final, decisive move. He broke through her dark aura and grabbed her directly, channeling his 777X ability and vowing to save her right away. His power erupted in a massive, purifying explosion as he unleashed a 777-fold strike, aimed directly at the heart of the cursed sword's power. After successfully freeing her from the curse, the protagonist gently held the unconscious Princess Helene, praising her for doing her best to fight it. The threat was not over, however, as the demon sword itself began to speak, expressing its surprise at his power and declaring its intent to possess him next. He entrusted the safe but unconscious princess to her sister and turned to face the remaining undead army, announcing it was time to clean up the garbage. Exhausted from the battle, Princess Iris bravely fought off the last remnants of the sword's dark influence while calling out for her sister. With the danger finally past, the two sisters shared a tearful and emotional reunion, with Iris crying in relief that Helene was finally safe. Confronted by the undead army, the protagonist declared he would start with the subordinates and began to effortlessly cut them down. After easily dispatching most of the army, he openly mocked their reputation as conquerors, finding them pathetically weak. When the evil spirit tried to use the last of the skeletons as projectiles, the protagonist became enraged, bizarrely claiming the undead as his own subordinates. With a sinister grin, he turned to the last confused skeletons and offered to clarify to them who their new master was. Finally confronting the sword's spirit, who was baffled by its inability to possess him, the protagonist silenced it with a promise of a spanking. As he effortlessly destroyed the legendary undead army, the protagonist began to mock them, shouting that they were all far too weak. The cursed sword's spirit called him a rude person for his insults, but he simply grinned with battle lust and continued the one-sided slaughter. As he destroyed its army, the proud evil spirit was reduced to begging him to stop, unable to bear the loss of its minions. After the spirit was silenced, he finally took a breath, now the master of the legendary and once cursed demon sword, Eleanor. Standing triumphantly atop a mountain of bones, he declared that the legendary evil he had just faced wasn't much of a big deal after all. Having had enough of the sword's evil, the protagonist threw the cursed blade to the ground, causing the spirit within to cry out in pain. As the sword continued to curse him, he stood over it triumphantly and declared that its spanking was now officially complete. The spirit of the barbarian king, also tied to the sword, expressed its utter disbelief that a mere human had managed to overpower him. With the battle finally over, the protagonist casually picked up the legendary demon sword, nonchalantly informing the shocked onlookers that the powerful weapon was now his. A recovered but worried Princess Helene called out to him, concerned for his well-being after such a difficult and dangerous fight. After freeing Princess Helene, the protagonist noticed her body was abnormally hot, a dangerous side effect of the sword's possession. Worried for her safety, he angrily demanded that the defeated demon sword explain the exact nature of this side effect. As the weakened princess stumbled, he quickly caught her, holding her close and asking if she was okay. Touched by his concern, the blushing princess apologized for her weakness and confessed her desire to be with him. Her heartfelt confession led to an intimate moment between the two, their bond strengthened by the shared danger they had overcome. The defeated demon sword revealed the dangerous side effect it had inflicted upon Princess Helene, overwhelming and uncontrollable sexual urges. The sword explained that this was a fatal curse. If the urges were not satisfied, her own blood circulation would explode, killing her. Understanding the bizarre and intimate nature of the only possible cure, the protagonist volunteered to take responsibility, telling the others to entrust the princess to him. Before the others could protest, he scooped the princess onto a horse and used his 777X riding skill to speed away toward his private mansion. Thanks to his incredible speed, they arrived at the mansion almost instantly, where his loyal maid Mio was waiting to welcome them home. He arrived back at his mansion with the ailing princess in tow, where a curious Mio was waiting to welcome them home. He brought the princess to a bed to rest and recover from her ordeal, and she gratefully thanked him for saving her life. Overcome with emotion from the rescue and his gentle care, the princess began to confess her true, heartfelt feelings for him. Her tearful confession led to a passionate and intimate kiss between the hero and the princess he had just saved. In a comedic turn, the sentient demon sword began to complain about the romantic situation, leading to a bizarre argument with the protagonist over whose fault it was. After his last great battle, the protagonist found he had collected 10 lottery tickets, the perfect amount to pay another visit to the mysterious room. Upon his return, he was welcomed as usual, but was immediately surprised to see a new face. A small, unknown girl also standing in the room. He was completely taken aback by the presence of the mysterious little girl, wondering who she could possibly be. Unable to contain his curiosity, he approached the girl and directly asked her who she was. Meanwhile, elsewhere, another powerful individual, a young man now wielding the tame demon sword Eleanor, also held a fan of lottery tickets, preparing for his own turn. To the protagonist's complete shock, the defeated demon sword suddenly manifested a new and beautiful human form. The woman menacingly introduced herself as Eleanor and, surrounded by a dark aura, declared that in her new form, she could finally destroy him. Before she could act, the mysterious little girl who had appeared earlier lunged forward to attack, identifying Eleanor as a legendary bringer of chaos. Eleanor was then suddenly transported to the lottery room, where she immediately tried to summon her powerful army of undead slaves. To her shock, her powers failed completely, and the room's attendant angrily scolded her for trying to bring outsiders into the neutral space. Cashing in his 10 recently acquired tickets, the protagonist prepared to take advantage of the special bargain and draw from the lottery 11 times. Before his final draw, the mysterious little girl questioned him suspiciously about his recent activities, but he just brushed it off, eager to see his prize. His luck seemed terrible at first, as all 10 of his initial draws resulted in the lowest tier participation prize, the Black Magic Stone. On his final, 11th draw, however, he won the 5th prize, a white magic stone for healing. He celebrated by playfully teasing the pouting little girl. Their celebration was short-lived, as a comical struggle began when they realized neither of them could physically reach the prize inside the machine. Back in the lottery room, the protagonist had to physically lift the grumpy little girl up to the machine, much to her annoyance, so she could make the draw for him. Their bickering partnership proved fruitful, however, as they were showered with confetti after winning the coveted second-place prize, the Warp Feather. The prize was revealed to be an incredible artifact that allowed for unlimited instant teleportation to any location the user had previously visited. The little girl, unaware of the item's power, asked if they had won something good, and the protagonist ecstatically confirmed that they had. Despite their incredible luck, the little girl maintained her grumpy facade, pouting at the protagonist's cheerful success. Having tamed the demon sword, the protagonist laid down his new rules. Eleanor would now be his weapon, and he would keep her close to prevent any mischief, despite her empty threats. Sometime later, a fully recovered and elegantly dressed Princess Helene, accompanied by Mio, formally thanked the protagonist for waiting for her. He complimented her on her beauty and confirmed their next destination, offering to take her back to the U-Boy fort where her worried family was waiting. Instead of traveling normally, he produced the Warp Feather and, after a quick goodbye to a shocked Mio, prepared to instantly teleport with the princess. In the next instant, they had arrived, standing before the massive stone walls of their destination, the U-Boy fort. Using the Warp Feather, the protagonist and Princess Helene instantly teleported to the fort, shocking her sister Iris and the guards with their sudden arrival. After receiving a mild scolding from a worried Iris, the fully recovered princess confirmed she was okay, thanks to the protagonist's help. Helene explained to her sister that their instant travel was a special magic only the protagonist could use, noting that she was the very first person he had used it with. The princess then looked at him with a deep blush, shyly repeating with significance that she was his first. She immediately became flustered by her own forwardness, letting out a small squeal as her annoyed sister loudly cleared her throat. Relieved that her older sister was finally safe from the curse, a tearful Princess Iris confessed just how worried she had been. Princess Helene gently comforted her younger sister, apologizing for causing her so much worry and thanking her for everything. Watching the emotional reunion, the protagonist stood by with a content smile, satisfied that everything was fine and that he had brought the two sisters back together. As she prepared to leave, Princess Helene thought of the royal law that she could only be with one man for her entire life, cementing her romantic feelings for the protagonist. As the princess sadly said her farewell, the protagonist confidently reassured her that this was not the end and that they would certainly meet again soon. With the previous crisis resolved, a new adventure was already on the horizon in the northern forest of Roizen, where a so-called Emperor of Hell was rumored to be awakening. Before departing on this dangerous new mission, the protagonist shared a quiet moment of understanding with Princess Helene. He accepted her unspoken feelings, and she, in turn, promised that she would be waiting for his safe return from the perilous journey ahead. Their emotional farewell concluded with one last warm and reassuring embrace before he had to leave. As the soldiers cheered their hero on, the protagonist internally declared that after all they had been through, Princess Helene had now become one of his women. Arriving at his new destination, the protagonist was surprised to find a massive gathering of various adventurers, and he wondered what was going on. He took a moment to observe the diverse crowd, which was composed of all the classic fantasy archetypes, from knights and wizards to priests. He was quickly approached by a quest organizer who recognized him and confirmed that he had been summoned there for a monster subjugation mission. A nearby adventurer excitedly recited his list of recent accomplishments, from hunting monsters to stopping a corrupt official, revealing that his heroic deeds had made him famous. This admiring fan then introduced herself as Io, an S-rank adventurer, much to the protagonist's surprise. While some adventurers were skeptical of the protagonist's fame, the S-rank adventurer Io defended him, confirming that his heroic deeds were widely known. Io then confessed that her dream was to have fun adventures and to one day become an amazing person, just like the protagonist. With a heartfelt, blushing smile, she looked at him and declared that his amazing deeds were the very reason she admired him so much. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another famous hero, an A-rank adventurer named Alexis, who was known as the ace of the local guild. As the newcomer prepared to brief the adventurers on their quest, the protagonist and Io shook hands, agreeing to do their best and work together. The leader of the adventure party briefed the assembled heroes on their mission. A massive monster outbreak had occurred in the nearby forest, and they had to stop it at all costs. He explained that their primary target was a specific cave deep in the forest, which had been identified as the monster's nest and the source of the outbreak. The leader stressed that while the monsters were weak individually, they were numerous, and that only by working together as a team could they hope to succeed. The leader then singled out the protagonist, condescendingly forbidding the D-rank adventurer from acting on his own and disrupting their carefully planned formation. In response to the open skepticism, the protagonist simply smiled and humbly told his new party members that he was, in fact, just a beginner at fighting. The protagonist revealed his simple and somewhat selfish motive for joining the dangerous quest. He was just curious to see how high-level adventurers fight. As they marched through the forest, their journey was cut short when a lookout suddenly warned them that a group of monsters was approaching. The enemy was revealed to be a massive horde of armed skeleton warriors, a sight that took the protagonist by surprise. The A-rank adventurer Alexis immediately took command of the party, ordering the archers and mages at the rear to prepare a ranged attack. On his command, the adventurers unleashed a powerful volley of arrows and magic, shattering the front lines of the charging skeleton army. The protagonist suggested a plan involving lightning magic, his specialty, while another adventurer began to cast a powerful but slow-activating spell. The S-rank adventurer Io also prepared for the assault, calling down a massive lightning strike from the heavens. With a fierce cry, the other powerful mage in their party unleashed her own fully charged lightning attack. The combined magical power of the adventurers resulted in a colossal explosion of electrical energy that completely annihilated the enemy. Watching the incredible display of teamwork and power, the protagonist was genuinely impressed, happy to finally see how pro adventurers fight. Wielding his magic sword, the A-rank adventurer Alexis rallied the troops, leading the charge to protect the town from the approaching undead horde. The adventurer's front line crashed into the skeleton army, with warriors and mages fighting side by side against the relentless enemy. The battle raged fiercely, with skilled heroes like Alexis fighting with all their might to hold back the seemingly endless tide of skeletons. Despite their bravery, the adventurers were clearly struggling against the overwhelming numbers, with many locked in desperate, one-on-one duels for their lives. Throughout the chaotic battle, the party's ace, Alexis, fought on valiantly, using his powerful magic sword to cut down any skeleton that stood in his way. As he watched the other adventurers fight, the protagonist observed their impressive teamwork and how they effectively covered each other's backs. He then entered the battle himself, calling upon the spirit of the demon sword and commanding the undead skeletons to attack. He led the charge with his own overwhelming power, effortlessly shattering a skeleton skull with a powerful stomp. His brutal and efficient assault continued as he crushed another skeleton's head in his bare hand. Watching his incredible performance, the S-rank adventurer Io could only blush with admiration, thinking to herself that he was truly amazing. At first, the protagonist stood back from the fight, believing the other adventurers were strong enough to handle the skeletons without his intervention. He used the opportunity to investigate a fallen skeleton, asking the spirit of the demon sword if these were similar to the undead she could create. The sword, Eleanor, explained that this was an ancient army of the undead that had been sealed within the forest for centuries. She further revealed that they likely came from the very same place where she herself had been sealed away. However, when he asked if she could command them, she admitted that this ancient army was completely beyond her control. The adventurers stood in a daze, watching a colossal explosion erupt from the forest, sending a massive plume of smoke and debris into the air. The shockwave left everyone speechless and stunned. Moments later, the adventurers were fleeing in terror through the forest. The guild leader questioned what was happening, while a panic mage beside him was visibly terrified. Meanwhile, Io and the other adventurers felt a powerful tremor in the ground. They wondered if it was another earthquake, but the sound and vibrations seemed to come from something else entirely. The adventurer leader was scrambling to protect his group from a devastating shockwave. He screamed, checking if everyone was all right, as debris flew through the air all around them. The protagonist's party was pushing forward toward what looked like a calamity. He wondered if the sound they were hearing was an earthquake, but the look on Io's face next to him suggested that something much worse was about to happen. The adventurers stood in a daze, watching a colossal explosion in the forest. The tremor in the air and ground caused panic and left everyone speechless. In a moment of chaos, the adventurers fled through the forest, unaware of what was to come. The mage Io and the other adventurers felt a strong tremor, wondering if it was an earthquake or something worse approaching. The group's leader tried to protect everyone from a shockwave, screaming to make sure everyone was all right. The protagonist's party advanced toward the chaos, with a sound of something approaching made the mage Io realize that something much worse than an earthquake was about to happen. Eleanor's voice echoed in the protagonist's mind, ordering her servant, the Emperor of Hell, to kill the cheeky brat with his power. The protagonist was confused by the words kill and nor. In a moment of tension, the protagonist, the mage Io, and the leader of the adventurer group looked on in shock at the arrival of a new threat, a massive monster. From the forest, the Emperor of Hell, Sandros, a huge and terrifying creature, emerged, ready for battle. The enraged creature, Sandros, screamed for Eleanor, asking where she was. His anger was palpable, and he swore vengeance. Eleanor explained with a smug smile that the monster was her faithful servant and her greatest trump card, showing her confidence in the creature's power. The monster Sandros roared in anger, ready to attack. His clenched fists indicated his fury as he prepared to charge. The adventurer leader, Alexis, shouted to his companions, asking them to cover him. The adventurers got ready, holding their positions in a battle formation. The protagonist questioned Eleanor if the monster was not her faithful subordinate, and she explained that he was enraged because she had left him to roam freely. The protagonist showed no sympathy. The battle began, and the mage Io attacked with her arrows. The protagonist and Alexis ran toward the monster while the rest of the group cast spells. Sandros attacked with brutal force. The leader Alexis looked back with a desperate expression. If they lost the fight, the town would be destroyed. The leader of the adventurers, Alexis, looks at the protagonist with suspicion and questions if he is truly a D-rank adventurer. Around him, Sandros rises, holding an axe. The protagonist approaches the monster Sandros, ready for combat. Alexis follows him, looking worried and exhausted by the situation. Alexis, the leader of the adventurers, attacked Sandros with everything he had, shouting that he would fight with all his might. The protagonist and the mage Io were impressed by his determination. The monster Sandros manages to block Alexis's attack with his arm, and the group leader's attack has no effect. One of the adventurers screams Alexis's name in panic. The protagonist asks Alexis to step back, saying that he and the group would not be able to defeat the monster. Alexis, surprised by the comment, questions him if he really thinks he can defeat Sandros alone. The protagonist stood in front of the monster Sandros, confidently declaring that he would defeat it. The monster seemed ready for battle, but the protagonist had a confident smile on his face. The monster Sandros roared with rage, and his glowing eyes showed his fury. He was ready to attack, and his expression indicated his intention to strike with full force. The adventurers prepared for the fight, some with a determined posture, but others showing their fear. They knew that if the monster reached the town, many people would die. The panicked mage Io told the protagonist that she had to help him. The protagonist, with a smile, told her that you reap what you sow, and that he didn't know what would happen to him if he got caught by Sandros. The protagonist launched an attack, running toward the monster with overwhelming speed. In the blink of an eye, he approached Sandros, ready to strike. The group of mages and priests prepared for the attack, casting powerful light and dark spells at the monster. Sandros was hit by the magic of the priests and mages, but the attack had no effect, only making him roar in anger. The protagonist was thrown away by the attack. The protagonist was thrown to the side. The skeletons approached, ready to attack. The protagonist was exhausted. The protagonist found himself surrounded by skulls. He thought that it was the end for him. Sandros was caught by surprise, being attacked from behind by a fireball, and the protagonist, seeing the opportunity, ran toward him. The protagonist moves forward with his sword, and the skeletons he faces break into pieces and explode. The protagonist yells at the other adventurers to step back. He says he will take care of the monster, and the other adventurers look at him in shock. The monster Sandros, who seemed to be annoyed by the attacks, lets out a deafening roar of anger and fury. The adventurers, in a display of strength and teamwork, cast fire spells and shoot arrows at the monster. The monster Sandros is hit by several fire spells, and the explosions cause massive damage. The monster lets out a cry of pain and fury. The protagonist managed to stop the monster Sandros' attacks, and the mage Io and the other adventurers looked at him in awe. They couldn't understand how he managed to stop all those strikes. The protagonist remained on guard with his sword, while the group of adventurers watched the fight from a distance. The protagonist was ready for battle. In a close-up, the monster Sandros shows an expression of fury and rage. He has his teeth clenched, ready to attack. In the midst of the wreckage, trees were toppled. The ground was plowed, and the damage is visible. The monster Sandros howls in pain as the protagonist's attack causes a great explosion. The attack was so powerful that it destroyed everything in its path. The mage Io casts a lightning spell that strikes the monster, electrocuting it. The monster roars in pain as electricity spreads through its body. The adventurers watch the protagonist in shock, confirming to themselves that the rumors about his power were true. The protagonist appears in front of the mage Io and other adventurers. He asks her if she can help him evacuate the injured people. The protagonist turns to the mage Io, asking her if she used teleportation magic to escape. The mage Io is confused and questions him about the teleportation. She also comments on how her magic is effective. The protagonist turns around, and the mage Io and the other adventurers are in shock as they witness his power. The protagonist says that the rumor about his power is indeed true. The mage Io tries to make a deal with the protagonist, asking him to use his teleportation magic to get people out of the battlefield while she tries to stop the monster. The panicked mage Io is thrown to the side, and she screams in pain. She cries out the protagonist's name in desperation as she is launched away. The protagonist turns to the mage Io and tells her that he is counting on her to help him. The mage Io, blushing and embarrassed, stutters in response. The protagonist says he will take care of the monster when the time comes. The mage Io looks at him in shock. The mage Io yells that she will try to slow the monster down. The protagonist looks at her, astonished by her determination. The mage Io tries to get up after being hit by the attack. The protagonist runs toward her, shouting her name and asking if she is all right. The protagonist appears in front of the mage Io and tells her that he is counting on her to help him evacuate the injured people. The mage Io, blushing and embarrassed, stutters in response. The mage Io, with tears in her eyes, says that she wants to be like the protagonist. She says that she will put her life on the line for her comrades, and that she wants to be that kind of adventurer. The mage Io begs the protagonist to let her be the one to do the attack. The protagonist looks at her with an expression of concern and says her name. The mage Io, in a state of exhaustion and injured, tries to reassure the protagonist, saying that she is fine. He apologizes, but asks her to go back to the base camp. The mage Io, with tears in her eyes, keeps begging the protagonist, who calls her a good girl, and tells her to give him 30 seconds. He only needs 30 seconds to take care of the monster and asks her to help him protect everyone. The protagonist runs towards Sandros, who is standing in his way. The mage Io looks at him, with tears in her eyes, but with an expression of determination. He says he is counting on her, and she replies yes.